Maria lived in a small town where life moved slowly, and people knew almost everything about each other. She was the kind of woman who never stood out in a crowd. Her clothes were plain, her hair was always tied back in a simple bun, and she walked quietly through the streets with a smile for everyone. People respected her kindness but rarely paid deeper attention to her. For them, she was just Maria, the woman from the bakery, nothing more. Every morning before the sun rose, Maria would walk down the narrow streets to the bakery where she worked. She loved the smell of fresh bread, the warmth of the ovens, and the satisfaction of seeing customers leave with a loaf in their hands. She did not earn much, but she never complained. She had learned long ago that happiness was not about money. It was about the little things: watching children laugh while biting into a warm bun, seeing an old man's face brighten when she added an extra pastry to his bag, or hearing neighbors greet her warmly as she walked home. But behind her calm and ordinary life, Maria carried a secret. When she was alone, she sang. Not just humming or whispering a tune, but truly singing with her whole heart. Her small house often filled with her voice late at night when everyone else was asleep. She would sit by the window, looking at the stars, and let her voice rise softly into the quiet sky. Singing was her comfort, her hidden treasure, something she never shared with the world. She had discovered her love for singing when she was a child. Her mother used to sing lullabies to her, and young Maria would imitate her, surprising the family with her sweet voice. But life was not always kind. When her father passed away early, Maria had to help her mother run the household. Singing became something private, a way to ease her worries, rather than a dream she could pursue. As she grew older, she believed less and less that her talent mattered. After all, who would listen to a simple woman from a bakery? Still, singing lived inside her. When she kneaded the dough in the bakery, she would quietly hum melodies. Sometimes her co-workers heard her soft voice and told her she sounded beautiful, but she always brushed it off with a shy laugh. "Oh, it's nothing," she would say, pretending it was just a little habit. She didn't want attention. She didn't want anyone to think she was reaching beyond her place in life. Her neighbors knew her as kind and dependable. If someone needed help, Maria was there. If children were playing outside and one of them fell, she would rush to comfort them. People liked her, but no one saw her as someone extraordinary. They thought of her as gentle, not strong, as modest, not talented. And Maria accepted this view. She never asked for more. Yet, deep inside, there were moments when she wondered. What if she had the courage to sing for others? What if she stood on a stage, even a small one, and shared her voice? These thoughts often came and went like passing clouds, leaving her with both longing and fear. She worried that people would laugh at her. She worried her voice might tremble, or that she would not be good enough. So, instead of chasing the dream, she locked it safely away, hidden where no one could touch it. Her closest friend, Elena, was the only person who truly knew about Maria's gift. Elena had once heard her sing while passing by her window at night. She had stopped in her tracks, astonished, and listened quietly until Maria finished. After that evening, Elena begged Maria many times to sing at community gatherings or family events, but Maria always refused. "I am just a simple woman," she would say with a nervous smile. "People don't want to hear me sing. They want to hear famous singers, not someone like me." Elena argued, but Maria's modesty always won. Life continued this way for years. Days turned into months, months into seasons, and Maria remained the same quiet, hard-working, and unseen beyond the bakery walls. Yet her voice kept growing stronger, shaped by her emotions, her struggles, and her love for music. Every sorrow she endured, every joy she felt, somehow found its way into her songs. Her voice carried truth and honesty, something rare and powerful. But because she never shared it, no one knew. Sometimes, when she passed by the town square, she would see young performers standing with microphones, singing confidently before a small crowd. The audience would clap and cheer, and Maria would smile while walking by, though inside her heart whispered, "If only I had their courage." But the thought frightened her too much, so she buried it once more. At night, when the world was quiet, Maria often imagined what it would feel like to stand under bright lights, to see an audience waiting for her, and to let her voice flow freely without fear. Then she would shake her head, laugh softly at herself, and whisper, "No, that life is not for me." Still, the dream never fully left. It lingered in the corners of her heart like a secret flame, small but unextinguished. Maria's days seemed predictable, but her spirit carried a quiet strength that no one noticed. She had faced hardships, losing her father, struggling with money, working long hours, but she never let bitterness touch her. She carried herself with dignity, even when her clothes were simple and her shoes were worn. She lived for kindness, for small joys, and for the hidden world of music that belonged only to her. What Maria did not know was that life had a way of surprising people. Sometimes destiny waits for the right moment to reveal hidden gifts. She had no idea that soon, her voice, the one she kept locked away for so many years, would reach ears far beyond her little house, and would change not only how others saw her. Maria's life continued in its gentle rhythm, with the same quiet mornings at the bakery and evenings spent humming softly in her little home. She had never imagined anything could pull her away from her ordinary world. But sometimes fate takes a hand when least expected, and that is exactly what happened to Maria. One afternoon, her closest friend Elena stopped by the bakery. She leaned over the counter with an excited look on her face. "Maria," she whispered, "there is something I need to tell you." Maria wiped flour from her hands and smiled, not realizing her friend was about to change the course of her life. "There is a show coming to town," Elena continued. "It's a very popular television program. They are holding auditions here for ordinary people. Anyone can go up on stage and show a talent. Can you imagine? You should try." Maria laughed nervously, shaking her head. "Me? No, Elena. That is not for me. I could never stand in front of so many people. I would be too afraid." But Elena's eyes sparkled with determination. "You don't understand, Maria. This could be your chance. Your voice is special. I've heard it, I know it. You could surprise everyone." Maria felt her heart beat faster, though she quickly brushed it off. "No, no. I am just a simple woman. I don't belong on a stage. People would laugh at me." Elena didn't argue further that day, but her mind was made up. She knew Maria would never sign herself up, so she decided to do something bold. Without telling Maria, she went to the registration booth and entered Maria's name into the list of participants. She wrote down Maria's details, certain that her friend's hidden gift deserved to be heard. A few days later, Maria received a call she never expected. A cheerful voice on the other end said, "Congratulations, you have been selected to appear on our show this week. Please arrive at the studio at the given time." Maria was shocked. She thought it must be a mistake. "I did not sign up," she said quickly. But when the voice repeated her name and details, Maria realized the truth. Elena had done this. Her first reaction was frustration. She called Elena immediately. "Why did you do this to me? I cannot go. I will make a fool of myself." Elena only laughed softly. "No, Maria. You will not. You will shine. You don't see yourself the way others will see you. Just trust me this once. Please, go. You might regret it forever if you don't." Maria wanted to refuse, but something in her heart whispered that maybe, just maybe, she should try. She thought about all those nights she sang to the stars, all the times she had dreamed of standing on a stage. Perhaps this was fate pushing her forward. After many restless hours, she finally agreed. On the day of the show, Maria woke up feeling both nervous and excited. She had never traveled to the city before, and the studio was bigger than she imagined. Bright lights decorated the entrance, and posters of famous singers and past winners hung on the walls. She felt completely out of place, standing there in her simple dress while other contestants wore flashy clothes and spoke confidently about their talents. Inside the waiting room, Maria sat quietly in a corner. Around her, people laughed, practiced, and boasted about their skills. Some carried instruments, others had dramatic makeup, and one even rehearsed dance moves loudly. Maria folded her hands tightly and prayed she would not be laughed at. She thought about running away, but each time she tried to gather the courage to leave, Elena's voice echoed in her mind, "You will shine." Finally, a studio assistant called her name. Her legs felt heavy as she walked towards the stage. Behind the curtain, she could hear the noise of the live audience clapping and cheering for the contestant before her. She peeked through a gap and saw the bright stage, the cameras, and the famous host standing confidently with his microphone. He was known for his sharp tongue and playful jokes, sometimes making fun of ordinary people for laughs. This made Maria's stomach tighten even more. The assistant touched her shoulder and whispered, "You're next." Maria took a deep breath. She thought of her late mother's lullabies, of the bakery mornings, and of all the secret songs she had kept hidden. She stepped forward, her heart pounding louder than the audience's claps. As she walked onto the stage, the lights blinded her for a moment. She could barely see the faces in the crowd, but she could hear their laughter and chatter. The host looked at her with a curious smile, scanning her plain clothes and nervous expression. He raised an eyebrow as if he had already decided what kind of contestant she was. "Well, well," he said in a playful tone, "what do we have here? Tell us, dear, what talent are you bringing for us tonight?" His voice carried a hint of sarcasm, and the audience chuckled. Maria's voice trembled as she answered softly, I will sing." The host smirked. "Oh, wonderful. A singer. We always love singers, don't we?" he asked the crowd, making them cheer and laugh. But his tone suggested he didn't expect much from her. He handed her the microphone, leaning back with an amused expression, ready to see her stumble. Maria's hands shook as she held the microphone. For a brief second, she thought of running off the stage. She could hear whispers from the audience, some people giggling, waiting to be entertained at her expense. She closed her eyes, blocking everything out, and remembered the nights she sang under the stars. She told herself, "Sing as if no one is here. Sing like you always do." And with that thought, she prepared to open her voice, not knowing that what would happen next would. Maria stood at the center of the stage, holding the microphone tightly with both hands. The bright lights shone directly into her eyes, making it hard for her to see anything clearly. All she could hear was the restless crowd murmuring and laughing softly, waiting for her to begin. The host stood to one side with a half smile, ready to make another joke if she faltered. Her heart was beating so fast that she thought everyone in the room could hear it. Her palms were sweaty, and her throat felt dry. For a moment, doubt clouded her mind again. She remembered the bakery, the simple streets of her town, and how she had never faced such a large audience before. A voice inside whispered, "You don't belong here. They are waiting to laugh at you." But then another memory rose: her mother's gentle lullabies, the secret songs she had sung under the stars, and Elena's words telling her she would shine. She closed her eyes, took a slow breath, and decided that this was her moment. She would not let fear control her. The audience fell silent as the music track began to play. At first, Maria's voice came out soft and shaky, barely reaching the corners of the room. A few people in the crowd chuckled, expecting her to fail. The host raised his eyebrows, ready to speak. But then something shifted inside Maria. She reminded herself of how she always sang when no one was listening, how her voice carried her feelings in the privacy of her home. She focused on that memory and let her heart lead her voice. The next note was stronger, clearer, and filled with emotion. The laughter in the audience stopped instantly. Her voice began to rise, filling every corner of the studio with warmth and strength. It wasn't just singing, it was storytelling. Each word she sang carried her struggles, her love, her pain, and her dreams. People leaned forward in their seats, surprised by the sudden change. The host, who had been preparing another sarcastic comment, stood frozen, his smile fading into awe. He could not believe that the shy woman standing in plain clothes could produce such a powerful sound. Maria kept her eyes closed, pouring herself into the song. The nervousness melted away, replaced by a calm strength she had never felt before. Her voice soared higher, flowing effortlessly with the melody. Some audience members began to clap in rhythm, while others simply sat speechless, their eyes wide with amazement. A young girl in the front row squeezed her mother's hand, whispering, "She sounds like an angel." An elderly man wiped a tear from his eye, moved by the sincerity in her voice. Even the stage crew, who had seen countless performances before, paused their work to listen. Maria's singing created a silence that was not empty but full of emotion. It was the kind of silence where people are too captivated to make a sound. No one laughed anymore, no one whispered. The only thing that filled the air was Maria's voice, rising and falling like waves on a calm sea. The host glanced at the audience, then back at Maria. His expression had completely changed. He was no longer amused, he was humbled. He lowered his microphone, realizing that anything he said would only disturb the magic of the moment. As Maria reached the climax of the song, her voice grew even stronger. It seemed impossible that such power could come from someone so modest and unassuming. The notes carried emotion so pure that the audience felt as if they were living her story with her. Her voice did not just entertain, it touched hearts. When the final note echoed through the hall, Maria slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, the studio was completely silent. She wondered if she had done something wrong. Her hands shook slightly as she lowered the microphone, waiting for a reaction. Then, all at once, the silence broke into thunderous applause. The audience stood to their feet, clapping, cheering, and shouting her name. Some waved their hands in the air, others whistled, and many had tears in their eyes. The applause grew louder and louder, filling the studio with energy. Maria's eyes widened in surprise. She had never imagined such a reaction. For years, she had hidden her gift, afraid of judgment. And now, here she was, standing before hundreds of strangers who had been moved by her voice. She pressed her hand against her chest, overwhelmed with emotion. The host walked slowly toward her, his usual confident posture replaced by humility. He looked at her with genuine admiration and said softly into the microphone, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have no words. What we just witnessed is something extraordinary. This is why we do this show, not for mockery, not for jokes, but for moments like this." The audience cheered again, agreeing with his words. The host then turned back to Maria, his eyes filled with respect. "You came here as a simple woman, nervous and unsure. But you have given us one of the most unforgettable performances we have ever seen. Thank you." Maria felt her cheeks grow warm. She bowed slightly, tears filling her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." In that moment, she realized something had changed. She was no longer just the woman from the bakery who sang secretly at night. She had shown her true self to the world, and the world had listened. Backstage, when Maria finally left the stage, many contestants and crew members came up to congratulate her. Some hugged her, others shook her hand, and everyone had kind words to say. A young man with a guitar said, "You have no idea how inspiring that was. You reminded me why I started singing in the first place." Maria smiled shyly, not knowing how to respond. She still felt like the same simple woman, but inside she could feel a spark of confidence growing. Meanwhile, the clip of her performance was already being prepared to air across the country. Little did she know that soon millions of people would watch her sing, and her life would change forever. For Maria, that night was not just about applause or recognition. It was about something much deeper. It was about proving to herself that she could face her fears, that her voice mattered, and that even a simple woman could touch hearts when she spoke or sang from her soul. Maria sat backstage, her heart still racing from what had just happened. The echoes of applause still rang in her ears like a dream she wasn't ready to wake up from. She pressed her hands together and whispered a silent prayer of thanks. For years, she had hidden her voice, convinced it wasn't worth sharing. And now, in just a few minutes on stage, everything had changed. As she sat quietly, she remembered the exact moment when the crowd had gone silent. The laughter that had once filled the room had melted away, replaced by stillness and awe. That silence had felt like magic to her, as if the world had finally paused to listen. And then came the applause, loud, endless, and full of emotion. That sound was not just for her song. It was for her courage. Meanwhile, out in the audience, people were still talking about her performance. Strangers turned to each other with wide eyes, saying things like, "Where has she been hiding?" and "I never expected such a voice from her." The cameras had captured not only her singing but also the stunned expression on the host's face, and viewers at home would soon see it too. The host himself could not stop thinking about Maria. For years, he had built his career on making people laugh, often at the expense of nervous contestants. He knew how to turn someone's fear into a joke that entertained the crowd. But Maria had stopped him in his tracks. He had been ready with a sarcastic comment when she first began, yet her voice had taken away every word from his mouth. It was rare for him to be silent, but in that moment, silence had been the only response possible. Backstage, one of the producers approached Maria with a smile. "You know," he said gently, "I've seen countless singers on this stage. Some are trained, some are polished, but very few touch the heart the way you did tonight. It was raw, real, and unforgettable." Maria blushed and lowered her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, though deep down she still struggled to believe the praise was truly for her. Soon, it was time for her to return to the stage for the judges' comments. She took a deep breath and walked out again, this time with a little more confidence in her steps. The audience greeted her with another round of applause, making her cheeks flush with emotion. One of the judges, a woman known for her strict and honest opinions, leaned forward and said, "Maria, you came on stage as someone we all underestimated. But the moment you began to sing, you reminded us that true talent is not about appearance, confidence, or fame. It is about honesty. Your voice came from the soul, and it reached directly into ours. Thank you for reminding us of that." Another judge added, "I have been in music for decades, and rarely do I come across a voice that feels so untouched, so pure. You are a gift to this stage." Maria could hardly believe their words. She felt tears welling in her eyes, but she blinked them back, not wanting to break down. She thanked them softly, her voice trembling. The host, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. He looked at Maria with a sincere expression, far different from his usual playful smirk. "I will admit something," he said to both her and the audience. "When you first walked onto the stage, I thought you were just another shy contestant I could joke with. I didn't expect much. But you proved me completely wrong. You silenced not just me, but every single person here. And that is something I will never forget." The audience erupted into cheers again. Maria looked around at the faces smiling at her, clapping for her, and she felt something shift deep inside her heart. For the first time in her life, she truly believed in her gift. That night, when the show ended, Maria returned home exhausted yet unable to sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire experience in her mind. She thought about the moment she almost ran off stage, the trembling in her hands, the way her voice had found strength, and the applause that had followed. She realized that courage was not about being unafraid, but about moving forward despite the fear. The next morning, something unexpected happened. As she walked through her little town, people she barely knew stopped her on the street. "Maria, we saw you last night. You were amazing," an old shopkeeper said with a grin. Children waved at her, calling her the singer lady. Even her neighbors, who had always known her as the quiet woman from the bakery, looked at her with fresh admiration. Elena rushed to meet her, hugging her tightly. "I told you, Maria. I told you that you would shine," she said with tears in her eyes. "You were incredible. The whole world saw what I already knew." Maria laughed softly, her own eyes brimming. "I was so scared, Elena. But when I closed my eyes, I just sang like I always do at home. I never imagined people would react that way." By the afternoon, Maria's performance was already spreading on social media. Clips of her singing filled timelines, with captions like "the voice that silenced the crowd" and "a simple woman who stole the show." Millions of people watched her, many leaving comments about how touched they were. Some wrote, "I cried listening to her," while others said, "This is why I love these shows, hidden gems like Maria." Maria was overwhelmed by the attention. She had lived her whole life unnoticed, blending into the background, and now strangers across the country were talking about her. But instead of letting it make her proud or arrogant, she felt humbled. She thought of her mother, of the bakery, of all the quiet nights she had spent singing with no one to hear. This was not just about fame. This was about finally sharing a piece of herself with the world. Days passed, and the reaction only grew. People began sending letters to the show, asking more about her. Radio stations played her clip, and some even invited her to sing live. Maria received phone calls she never thought possible, including offers to record her voice professionally. Each opportunity felt like a dream, yet she stayed grounded, reminding herself of who she was: a simple woman who loved music. One evening, as she stood by her window again, looking at the stars like she always did, she began to sing softly. But this time, the song carried new meaning. She was no longer singing only to herself. She was singing to everyone who had ever doubted themselves, everyone who had ever hidden their light out of fear. She wanted her voice to remind them that even the quietest person can hold something powerful within. Maria realized that her journey was only beginning. The world had heard her once, and now, they wanted to hear her again. She was nervous about what came next, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the laughter, the doubt, and the bright lights, and she had turned them into applause. Her story was now larger than just her. It was a story of courage, of hidden talent, and of how life can change in a single moment when you dare to step forward. Maria's life after the performance was no longer the same. Just days ago, she had been a quiet woman working in a bakery, known only by her neighbors and a few friends. Now, she was known across the country. Everywhere she went, people recognized her face, smiled warmly, and stopped to talk about her performance. When she walked through the marketplace, strangers approached her, saying, "You are the woman from the show. You sang so beautifully. We watched it with our family, and it made us cry." Mothers brought their children to meet her, saying, "Look, this is the lady with the golden voice." Maria felt shy with all the attention, but she also felt thankful. She had never imagined that her simple life would touch so many hearts. Back at the bakery, things changed too. Customers doubled, some traveling from nearby towns just to see her and hear her speak. "Will you sing a little for us while we buy bread?" people asked with hopeful smiles. Maria always laughed gently and shook her head, not ready to perform in such casual settings. But sometimes, when she was alone in the kitchen, she sang softly, and those who overheard felt lucky to witness her gift. Meanwhile, her performance clip continued to spread across television and the internet. News channels replayed the moment when the host stood in silence, stunned by her voice. Commentators spoke about her story, a simple woman, unnoticed by the world, who had risen above mockery and doubt to capture the hearts of millions. People began calling her the voice of truth and the hidden star. The host himself, once known for his sharp humor, admitted in interviews that Maria had changed him. "I learned an important lesson that night," he confessed. "Never judge someone by appearance or nervousness. Behind the most ordinary faces may lie the most extraordinary gifts." His words surprised many, but they showed just how deeply Maria's voice had touched not only the audience but also the people who had underestimated her. Opportunities began pouring in. Music producers wanted her to record songs. Concert organizers invited her to perform on bigger stages. Some even suggested she should compete internationally. Maria was overwhelmed. She had never dreamed of such a future. She had always imagined living quietly, baking bread, singing only to herself. Now the world wanted her to sing for them. At first, she hesitated. She was afraid of the unknown. She worried about losing the simple life she loved. But then Elena reminded her, "Maria, this is not just about fame. It is about sharing your gift. Think about all the people who wrote that your song gave them hope. You have the chance to inspire even more." Maria thought about those words for many nights. She realized that if her voice could bring comfort, joy, or courage to even one person, then it was worth stepping forward. So, with a humble heart, she accepted some invitations. Her first public concert was in a small theater, but it was filled to the last seat. When she stepped on stage, the sight of so many people waiting for her nearly brought her to tears. She sang the same way she always had, with honesty, with emotion, and with love. The audience responded just like the television crowd had, with silence, with tears, and finally with endless applause. From then on, each performance felt like a bridge connecting her heart to the hearts of strangers. Maria remained humble through it all. She continued working at the bakery in the mornings, saying, "This is where I belong to." She believed fame should not erase simplicity. She still greeted her neighbors warmly, helped children when they fell, and offered kind words to anyone in need. Fame did not change her character, instead, it gave her a chance to serve in a new way through her voice. Letters from across the country began arriving at her home. One girl wrote, "I was afraid to sing in front of my class, but after watching you, I tried, and everyone clapped for me." An older man wrote, "Your song reminded me of my late wife. Thank you for bringing me peace." Each letter touched Maria deeply, reminding her that her voice was not just sound, it was healing. Even the children of her town began looking up to her. They gathered outside the bakery and sang together, saying they wanted to be like Maria. She often stopped to listen, smiling and encouraging them. "Never be afraid to sing," she told them. "Your voice is a gift. Share it, because you never know who might need to hear it." One evening, Maria was invited back to the same television show where everything had started. This time, she walked onto the stage with confidence. The audience gave her a standing ovation even before she sang a single note. The host, now respectful and kind, welcomed her warmly and said, "Maria, you taught us all a lesson. We are honored to have you back." When she sang again on that stage, it felt different. She was no longer the nervous woman trembling with fear. She was a woman who had found her place, her courage, and her purpose. Her voice filled the studio once more, and once again, it left the crowd in awe. That night, as she returned home, Maria stood by her window, looking at the stars just as she had so many times before. She whispered to herself, "I used to sing only for the stars, thinking no one would ever hear me. But now, people everywhere listen. Perhaps the stars were preparing me all along." Her journey showed the world something important, that greatness does not always wear fancy clothes, stand on big stages, or come with loud confidence. Sometimes greatness lives quietly inside the most ordinary person, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Maria had been mocked at first, seen as too simple, too shy. But her voice had reminded everyone that true beauty lies in the heart, and when the heart speaks, it can silence even the loudest laughter. Maria continued her life with balance, partly in the bakery, partly on the stage. She never stopped being the woman who smiled at neighbors and helped others, but she also never stopped singing for the world. And wherever she went, people remembered the night when a humble woman walked onto a stage to be mocked, and instead left an entire nation speechless. Her story spread far beyond her town, beyond her country, becoming an inspiration for anyone who doubted themselves. She proved that courage and truth could turn fear into strength, and that even the smallest voice, when spoken with honesty, could echo forever.